Danger on Deception Island takes place on the San Juan Islands off of Washington State. It begins with some great music, and I have to say, I love the music in this game. It's incredibly catchy and memorable, maybe my favorite out of the entire series. Nancy is staying with George's friend Katie Firestone. Katie's a marine biologist who does whale watching tours. Nancy says she feels on edge because the town is called Snake Horse Harbor. Kind of a creepy name for a town, don't you think? Whenever Nancy says that, I get annoyed. She's on Deception Island! That is a much more ominous name. But no one in the game ever mentions Deception Island. It only appears on the map and newspapers. It's almost like Her Interactive changed the title of the game partway through, and that's why all the characters talk about Snake Horse Harbor. Nancy notes that the sky isn't cloudy, it's just gray. I live in the Pacific Northwest. I can confirm that the environment in this game is incredibly accurate. The sky looks like that. The ocean and beaches look like that. And tons of people wear flannel all year long, even during the summer when it doesn't make sense to do so. They really nailed the environment in this game, and it fits the storyline, giving players a constant sense of vague uneasiness, so thumbs up on that. Katie leads Nancy to her boat, which is accompanied by some unique walking animation. Katie puts her groceries down, and the game jumps to the standard Katie is talking to Nancy scene. Katie explains her boat was sabotaged by unknown villains, and she'll spend the rest of the game fixing the engine. I like Katie's character design. Her hair and green sweater look good, but that black vest is all wrong. She's friendly enough, but still distant enough that I believe the stories about her terrible temper, and it's plausible that she's the culprit. Katie tells Nancy to relax, then info dumps players with the fact that to work the kayaks, they need to use a GPS and wear a life vest and obey the channel markers and watch out for fog. That's a bit too much information all at once. I would have cut out the line about fog since Nancy never has to deal with it. Nancy goes downstairs and unpacks. Her suitcase has items from previous Nancy Drew games, which is a nice touch. There are maps and a kitchen area in the boat. You can cook a sandwich here and give yourself food poisoning if you put the wrong things inside. That puzzle certainly caught me by surprise the first time I played the game, and I died instantly. Why doesn't Katie throw out any of her expired food? Bess and George call in both the food poisoning game over sequences. It works because Bess is obsessed with cooking in this game. It's actually a funny thing for her to focus on, and the game gets a lot of mileage out of that storyline. I liked it. I also like the game over sequences in general. They're funny, especially compared to the last game where the game over sequences were all, Nancy's getting yelled at! The next game is going to return to angry game over sequences, which is sad. I kinda wish the series had continued with the more humorous game overs. When you try to use Katie's sink, she asks you to fix the faucet. This is a puzzle that is poorly done, in my opinion. The only instruction you get is right-click to rotate pieces. That's a bad instruction because you don't rotate pieces to solve the puzzle. What you have to do is put all the pieces into place. You have to work your way from bottom to top. You also have to put the pieces in order. You can't put a piece into place unless it's the next one in the sequence. And you have to work around those two valves that are in the wall. Everything I said just now would be a better instruction for the puzzle than right-click to rotate pieces. If the puzzle had started out with one piece already in place, I think that would have helped immensely. Players would have figured it out quicker. Now I'm wondering if they originally had a senior mode version of the puzzle that did require you to rotate pieces, but the testers hated it so much they got rid of it. Anyway, it's a 13-piece jigsaw puzzle. Once you get the hang of it, it's not so bad. When you solve the puzzle, Nancy finds a card for Andy's whale world. Since Andy is the culprit, this makes no sense. Why would he leave his card behind at the crime scene? Why did he even take his card out when smashing the pipes? We never get an explanation for this, and it bugs me. I think they should have put the card in a different location, one that makes more sense. Because the way it is now, the game gives away the culprit's identity in the first 5 minutes. They could still ensure players have to solve the sink puzzle in order to solve the game by putting a different item under the sink, like the computer password or the headlamp that Nancy has to get from Katie later on. Just like the previous game, there's a laptop here. It has Nancy's to-do lists, case notes, and email. Most of the emails are from Hannah. Nancy's dad is causing trouble for her at home. New to Nancy's computer is an Anagram Buster and the Deception Island portal. That is the town's website. It has a hideous layout. I don't like looking at it. There are news stories about the burglaries, Holt Scotto's campaign, and the Orca. There's also an ad for Whale World. When you click on the search bar, you can select different searches like map or orca. More appear over the course of the game. I find it a little awkward that two URLs appear on the list of searches in the game. It doesn't match the other search terms, but that's just something minor. The navigation on top of Katie's boat is a little odd since you can only see Katie from one direction, and you can't stand with your back to Katie facing the dock. I don't know why they avoided letting players look in those two directions. I don't know. On the very top of the boat is a note that says to stop meddling or else. That's a great red herring because Holt Scotto will call Katie meddlesome. When you zoom in on the GPS, Nancy notes that it's broken. This is the only time you have to go to the top of the boat. I always ignore it for the rest of the game after looking at it here. When you talk to Katie, she confesses she got into a big fight at the town meeting last night. The fishermen are upset because they have to go far out of their way to avoid the orca. Katie agrees with the no-boat zone because she wants to help the whale. As Andy and Holt both note, the no-boat rule doesn't apply to Katie, so she's making tons of money off the whale. I kind of wish Nancy got to talk to Katie about this because it does seem sketchy. Also sketchy, Katie doesn't want to tell the police about the boat sabotage. She says Andy keeps trying to buy out her business, and she tells Nancy to get a replacement GPS from Holt. That's basically it for Katie's area. So Nancy heads away from the boat and to the bicycle. You have to click on the bicycle to reach the map in this game, but you need to click the helmet first. You have to click the helmet first every single time you change locations, or else you will die. Bike safety is mandatory. The map has 4 locations. It works fine, but the bicycling animation is a little too long for my tastes. Specifically, when you're going all the way from Whale World to the lighthouse, you have to watch the animation of going to the other 2 locations first. I don't like that. It's not that much of a pain to sit and watch the traveling scenes, yeah, but I wish it was like Secret of the Scarlet Hand, where you could just double click and skip to traveling scenes. Or like Secret of the Scarlet Hand again, where there was a separate animation for each trip. That was better. Whale World has Andy Jason. He's the generic good-looking guy who stands behind a desk all day. I love his curly hair and face, but his body doesn't look right. It looks like he stuffed a bunch of paper inside his shirt to make it look like he has huge muscles when he doesn't. The flannel color is nice, though, and Andy's talking screen is the most useful talking screen of the game. It's got a sign about the keychains, which is for a puzzle. There's a sign about clamming permits being sold here for a puzzle, and the fine for clamming without a permit for a puzzle. So, 3 puzzle clues on Andy's talking screen. He is maximizing the puzzle clues. When you talk to him, he's nice. Whale World is nice too. It's an educational place with games, like the Mayan Museum from Game 6, only much better. The games are nicer, and the educational stuff is far less overbearing. It's more visually interesting too. My favorite of the games is never a dull moment. You move the whale up, down, left, and right, and you need to eat a bunch of fish while avoiding predators. You also have to surface occasionally, which adds an extra level of difficulty. You get 3 lives, and unlike Barnacle Blast, dying doesn't reset your score. That's great! Feeding Frenzy is just like whack-a-mole. You click on the fish when they pop out of their holes. They make yum sounds, and they're really fun yum sounds. Yum, yum, yum. It's fun. It's a tricky puzzle because the fish move quickly, so you've got to move your mouse around and click very, very quickly. There's a minimum number of fish you have to click on, and I understand for both of those games, Senior Mode requires you to get a higher score than Junior Mode. Swim to Freedom is answering a quiz, but the questions are fairly easy. I can usually get them right without having to look at the exhibits. It helps that the questions are multiple choice. And it helps that you can get some wrong answers without automatically losing. So it's definitely better than the quizzes from Game 6. Also, it's more interesting to look at this quiz. It has actual pictures on it, not just a black screen that you're expected to type on. The whale sounds game is a simple matching game. I am terrible at it, so I end up hearing the same whale sounds over and over and over again. It's like, and it's kind of painful to hear that loud whale sound over and over again. It's a fair puzzle, though, and unlike the quiz, it's immediately obvious where you need to go in order to find the answers you need. And it's easy enough that you should be able to guess it on your own. Overall, Whale World gets a thumbs up from me. It has two games that are fun on their own, and two educational games that you can guess your way through. If I was on vacation here, I would definitely stop by Whale World, especially since beating all the games gives you a free spin on the Whale of Fortune! Nancy gets a free whale watching tour, which is clearly the best prize next to the free t-shirt. The tour is just Nancy and Andy, which is a tad surprising. I mean, we're told there's a ton of people who have come for Katie's whale watching tours. Now that she's not doing them, you think at least one person would get a tour from Andy. But no, I guess he's so unpopular, people would rather not see whales if it means hanging out with him for a half hour. Nancy takes pictures of various animals, and she sees the orca jump. Cool. She thanks Andy for letting her use his camera. I'm going to assume she emailed the photos to her dad or something, because Andy certainly doesn't let her keep the camera. Also in Whale World is a small gift shop. It's kind of neat looking. And did I mention the stained glass window above the doors of Whale World? They're so cool. They've got those little orca designs. The gift shop has a boat in a bottle, which is made by Benjamin Hawkins, one of the town's first founders. I also like the Hot Kettle Cafe. That was also a good, neat-looking location. I would have dinner there in real life. On the wall is a poster that shows off flags, which represent different letters, and words that represent different letters. There's a postcard of crab anatomy, which is kind of a weird postcard if you ask me, but it sure helps with the crab catching puzzle. In three places there are card designs on the wall, which is the basic puzzle of press one piece and another piece will move. We've seen it in many previous games. With this one, you want to make a royal flush. It's pretty simple, and you do it for three different card suits. You're technically not supposed to do this until later on in the game when you see Holt's book on poker and you read Casey's email about the Hot Kettle Cafe, but you can do the puzzle at any time. I guess the developers figured enough people know what a royal flush is going into the game. At the bar is Holt Scotto, the older sailor who's running for harbor master. I liked Holt. I would not like dealing with him in real life, but I thought he was funny in the game. He's got a gruff attitude and it amuses me. Holt mistakes you for a whale lover like Katie, and he tells Nancy all about Caddy, the snake horse. He mentions there were secret passages built into the town, and you know Nancy is going to find hidden passages. Holt offers to let you have his GPS if you pass his Seamanship Quiz. Thanks, Holt. I love taking quizzes when I'm on vacation. The questions are about boats, knots, the stars, and clamming. That doesn't apply to Nancy. She's kayaking, not sailing. You're supposed to look up the answers on Katie's computer, but if you already know the answers, you can type them in. Once you talk to Holt, you can talk to Jenna. She owns the cafe and gives you unlimited free food. Jenna is probably the worst character of the game. There's not a whole lot to do with her. She does have a good character design, but I think her arms are a little bit too skinny. I like her fish shirt. With little prompting, Jenna launches into complaints about how much she hates Katie, which is not the best way to introduce yourself to Katie's friends. Holt wants you to bring him a male Dungeness crab in addition to the quiz. You have to go to the lighthouse to get it. There are crabs at the beach, under large rocks, and some plastic thingy. If you accidentally pick up the wrong type of crab, Nancy can let it go. There's a game over sequence if you bring Holt the wrong crab twice. That is really harsh of Holt to get you in trouble for picking up female crabs. It's his fault you're picking up crabs in the first place. There are also piles of skipping rocks on the beach. Nancy can take 3 of them. At the end of the beach, you want to climb on the rocks, and you look right. There's a bottle in the ocean. You have to use the skipping rocks on it to dislodge it. And this is just like Squid Toss in the previous game. You have to pick the angle you're throwing at, how much power to use. It's an okay puzzle. I've gotten stuck on it before, though. When you solve the puzzle, you get the bottle and some victory music. It's great victory music. It's just a short little ditty that plays whenever you solve certain puzzles, and it makes me feel good. It makes me feel like I've really done something great. The bottle has a rosebud paper inside with numbers. I'm kind of surprised nobody recognizes the numbers as GPS coordinates. Everybody here is a sailor, right? You think somebody besides Nancy would pick up on Hilda's secret message, but they don't. If you go up the hill at the end of the beach instead of going to the rocks, you reach the lighthouse. Holt shows up and he orders you to get away from there, girly. Girly? Hey, I'm Nancy Drew. No trespassing signs do not apply to me. In retrospect, this scene is kind of weird because Holt never shows up at the lighthouse again. Nancy will apologize to him and everybody forgets about the entire scene. We don't find out why he's so protective of the lighthouse, do we? I guess the point of the scene is to let players know Holt is the one who has the number for the lighthouse lock, but that is not immediately obvious. The last thing in the lighthouse area is a piece of wood that says SS, and that was on the rocks. It has sharp splinters! SS stands for sharp splinters! Ow! It's important to the plot, so Nancy becomes obsessed with this piece of wood instead of dismissing it as a random piece of driftwood. She shows off the wood to Katie, and Katie says Nancy needs the help of librarian Casey Porterfield. Casey loves finding the source of driftwood, which is a weird hobby, but Casey is a weird person. He's another funny character. The joke with him is that he has a hard time hearing, and he's got some good lines, like, "You're as much use as a beanie in a hurricane!" Casey needs to identify the specific type of wood, so you go to the second level of the boat, which is above Nancy's bed area. The saboteur dumped all of Katie's books on the ground, and there's a puzzle getting them to fit in the drawer. I know a lot of people hate this puzzle, but I like it. It's great. I especially like how there are multiple solutions to the puzzle. I would have no complaints if this was a regular puzzle in the series, but I think it only shows up again in Legend of the Crystal Skull, and kind of with the plants in Curse of Blackmore Manor. When the books are all in place, Nancy gets the book on arboreal morphology. The book has a lot of big words, which are scary and confuse Nancy. In the back of the book is a glamour shot of Dr. Predivicu and her personal phone number. Do they print a new version of the book every time she switches phones? Above the book drawer is a microscope. You use it to look at the driftwood, then you call Dr. Predivicu. She won't answer the phone unless you're right next to the microscope. Dr. Predivicu has an interesting voice. I like her as a character. She starts off with a joke about doing a reading over the phone. I'm kidding, of course. She asks you a series of questions about the wood, and you have to answer them correctly. I wonder if they got someone to research all the possible responses to make sure they're accurate. That seems like a ton of work. If you get it wrong, you have to visit her website and do a quick 3x3 slider puzzle for another wood consultation. And once you get it right, she says the wood is Luan, you call Casey and you tell him this. When you call him back later, he says that the wood came from the SS Whitechapel Dawn. It was rumored to be smuggling something, and it's impossible for the debris to be showing up now, 5 years later. I'm pretty sure I've said this before, but I prefer open-ended Nancy Drew games like The Haunted Carousel or Curse of Blackmore Manor, where you can do pretty much everything in any order you want. I love the open-ended puzzle games. In this game, you're more or less forced to do things in a certain way. You can only get so far before you need to do Holt's Seamanship Quiz and get that GPS. Once you have the GPS, you can go kayaking and get the other 3 bottles. One is right by the kayak starting position, one is 2 spots forward from Katie's place, and one is in the sea caves. The computer lets you know the sea caves are interesting and you should go there. The computer's right, they are pretty neat looking. Kayaking's kind of fun. There are rocks and buoys that you need to go around, but they're not so bad. And once you get all 4 bottles, you use the GPS. I know I've said this a lot about the game, but I like the GPS. It's got a cool interface and that neat barefoot tracker logo animation. I wish the computer's interface was as good as the GPS's. So you enter the coordinates from the bottles into the GPS. This reveals a hidden beach. When Nancy goes there, she says, "I've never been to this beach before," which is kind of a dumb thing to say. You just discovered this beach, Nancy. Of course you haven't been there before. You can make a sandcastle here, which is a little fun, but pointless. I generally don't do it. At the end of the beach is a small tide pool and seaweed that covers a locked shell. To open it, you use the flags to spell out the word Rosebud. Inside is a letter. You use the words to spell out a message, so it's both of the word codes from Jenna's poster used back to back. I feel so bad for the players who had to go back to Jenna's twice to solve these puzzles. At least the story puzzle stays in your inventory so you don't have to return to the hidden beach to solve it. That would have been the worst. Like, back to Jenna's, back to the beach, back to Jenna's, back to the beach. Ah! Well, the message from the story puzzle is ask HSAJJD for Hilda's gift. In other words, we need to get an item from every character except Katie. Also inside the shell is a port and starboard note, which she'll use later. There's a letter from Hilda, which explains she needs a smart, inquisitive person to help her stop the culprits. Prove you're worthy by sending her something from the lighthouse in Morse code. Oh no, Hilda! I solved your GPS bottle puzzle. Isn't that enough work to prove I'm worthy? And I solved your 2 word puzzles too. Sadly, Hilda will make Nancy jump through several more hoops to prove she's good enough. Come on, Hilda, do you want to stop the criminals as soon as possible or not? I understand she went through a lot of trouble to set up these puzzles and she doesn't want them to go to waste, but time is of the essence here. I normally get the gifts in the order from easiest to hardest. Andy's gift is the easiest one to get. It's the keychain that you get for going on a whale watching tour. Andy tries to worm his way out of it by saying, "Oh, those are for paying customers only." But Nancy pressures him into giving it to her. The keychain can't be that expensive, so both Nancy and Andy are being super cheap here. The keychain has an orca and the letters Tren on it. For Holt's gift, he wants you to do a 2-step chess puzzle for him. In his duffel bag is a book on chess basics. He's been using the lighthouse code as a bookmark. That was a clever way for Nancy to get the code from Holt without him knowing. Granted, she didn't know that the code was in the book, but I still think it's a clever trick. I like that trick. I'm sure the chess puzzle makes sense to somebody who actually knows chess. I don't. So I either look up the solution or I guess until I get it right. When you get checkmate, you hear victory music and Holt shows you his knife. Hilda wrote 1 bum on it. I find it amusing that Holt has the only gift with actual words on it, and the words are a vague insult. Everybody else gets random letters, but Holt, you are the town's #1 bum. Jenna's gift is the tough one to get. She agrees to show you the necklace if you collect 15 clams. You have to get a permit from Andy Jason first, and oh wait! Andy doesn't feel like doing paperwork right now. Andy, stop being the town's #2 bum. He forces you to fix the caddy display, which is a jigsaw puzzle. You make the skeleton of Cadborosaurus. It can be kind of a tough puzzle, but I like it better than the pipe puzzle because you can put the pieces into place in any order and the pieces snap into place. That's great! Unlike the pipe puzzle, this one does require you to rotate the pieces. When you're done, Andy explains how clamming works. You look for holes in the sand, you zoom in on one, and use your clam tube on it. If you don't get a clam, you should try again later. This puzzle is a huge pain, simply because it takes forever. You have to go to the lighthouse beach and try all the clam holes multiple times. You also have to clam on the hidden beach. There's a sandbar near the hidden beach. There's a puzzle to reach the sandbar. You have to jump across a series of rocks to get there. You have to make 4 jumps, and if you mess up, there's a game over sequence. Once you get all the clams in an area, Nancy will say so. That is your cue to move on to one of the other areas. And thank goodness Nancy does this, because otherwise it'd be like the Dozen Little Critters puzzle from Ghost Dogs of Moon Lake, where there is no way to tell if you're finished with a particular area or not. Nancy will also tell you when you've got all 15 clams. Once you have them, you go to Jenna. She says the necklace is inside a locked box on the table. This is a puzzle I don't like. It is a card matching game. There are 24 cards, and you have to find all 12 matches. You do that puzzle 3 times in a row. I don't like the puzzle. It always takes me a long time, especially on senior mode, where some of the matches are made across screens. Like a card from screen 1 will match a card on screen 3. That just makes it way more difficult to get to Jenna's necklace. The necklace has Elef written on it. Like, elephant? What? Jenna says she was robbed. The thieves took food and boat parts from her back area, and you can now visit that back area and check it out. The final Royal Flush puzzle is in this area. It's the hardest one. It makes sense that the last one is the hardest one. Once you solve all 4 Royal Flush puzzles, a hidden passageway appears under a table. Nancy can't explore it because it's too dark. She has to go back to Katie and ask for a light. Katie says she's so hungry she can't think straight. And she's too lazy to go 5 feet and make a sandwich herself, so she forces Nancy to do it. Katie is a terrible friend. This is a good time to use the Anagram Buster on the computer. Nancy types in the letters from Hilda's gifts. You want to move the letters around to spell out telephone number. Unless I'm mistaken, Junior Mode has an automated Anagram Buster, which gives you a list of possible solutions. You can find the telephone number that way. It's easier. You don't have to do the Anagram Buster in order to beat the game, but it's still kind of cool. It's definitely better than forcing every single player to work out the solution on their own. When you give Katie a sandwich, she gives you a headlamp so you can explore the hidden tunnels. The tunnels remind me of the hidden tunnel in the final scene. There's not much to explore, but it's still kind of cool looking and kind of dangerous. You can see tunnels leading to other stores, but you can't enter the stores. There are cairns to mark the places that can be robbed. And yes, I now know the word cairn thanks to this game. I learned something from Danger on Deception Island. I was probably supposed to learn about whales, but no, I learned about cairns. If you go down the right tunnel, there's a 20-second scene of Nancy walking. That is too long. I would have cut the scene in half. At the end is an anvil rock puzzle for later and a door. And randomly, there's a box of rust remover here. Why is it here? That is a weird place to put it. I guess they put it here to make sure players would have to visit this area, but it still seems odd to me. They should have put the rust remover under Katie's sink. That would have been a better place for it. There's also the door puzzle here. On this side of the door, you push the two middle pieces down. And there's a pinging noise, so that's your clue this area is somehow connected to the pinging flagpole at the lighthouse. So there are two things to do at the end of the tunnel. At most, it takes you a minute to do them. Then you turn around and you watch the 20-second cutscene from the other direction. That is not good. We do not need two 20-second cutscenes back to back. The scenes play in their entirety every time you go into this area. I would have done a fade out after like the first 3 seconds or so. When you go to the lighthouse, Nancy's almost killed by a falling Klieg-light. A falling pufferfish. A rock. It's a falling rock. It's the same puzzle as the other games. You look up and you avoid being hit on the head. The inside of the lighthouse is plain. You open up the heater pipe thing for a hidden lever. When you pull it, it unlocks the doors by the flagpole outside. You open the doors and climb down the ladder to the basement. You've got the other half of the door puzzle here. On this side, you push the two middle slots up. When you do both halves of the door puzzle, the door opens. It's really neat that the lighthouse is connected to the hidden tunnels, but they're not really connected. If you try to go to the area that you didn't enter from, the path will be locked. So you can't enter the lighthouse and exit through the cafe. That was a disappointment to me. I understand, they probably set the game up like that because otherwise Nancy would end up trapped somewhere without her bicycle. But come on, the hidden passages are fake connected? That's a letdown, and all the more so because if they were real connected, I could skip the 40 seconds of walking animations in Jenna's tunnels. Solving the door puzzle also opens a trapdoor to the sea caves. That's a puzzle for later. There's a desk in the basement area with a box of light bulbs. You want to get the correct light bulb and go to the lighthouse. So in order to get the lighthouse light working, you need the light bulb and the rust remover. In other words, you need to visit both sides of the basement door. Each side has one item you need. Nancy insists that the light is rusted shut, but it looks fine to me. When you use the rust remover, absolutely nothing changes. It looks exactly the same. I have no idea why they didn't add some rust on the light for this scene, because it just looks silly for Nancy to clear away invisible rust. When the rust is gone, you put the light bulb inside, then you type in Nancy's phone number on the green box. You have to do this in Morse code, which is kind of a pain. I would have preferred just typing in the number myself. Once the puzzle is solved, Nancy is called by Hilda. Hilda's a pretty neat phone contact, and it's nice to finally hear her after working so hard to solve her puzzles. Hilda sends Nancy an email, and no, it's not explained how she knows Nancy's email address. She clearly doesn't know Nancy's phone number, but she knows her email. Okay, whatever. The email gives you the coordinates of your next location, but 5 of the numbers are missing. You have to figure out the numbers yourself. They're things like the price of clam chowder, the number of cairns in the tunnels, or the number on the buoy with graffiti. You basically have to go through the entire game again to solve the puzzle. It's a fine puzzle, but at this point there's already been enough backtracking with the clamming puzzle, so whenever I play the game, I just look up the answer instead of doing the backtracking. It's easier that way. You enter the coordinates on your GPS, kayak there to find a floating container with a Zap Tech transmitter inside. Hilda calls and reads you a poem about Anvil Rock, so Nancy backtracks to Anvil Rock and the hidden tunnels. There's a minor maze here. You follow these port and starboard paper. It has the directions that guide you left and right to the end, where you get another set of coordinates. Hilda's scavenger hunt is almost done. You go to those coordinates on your GPS. You use the ZapTech device for some binoculars. Hilda calls for the last time and explains she's not crazy. She just doesn't like dealing with other people. She pretends to be crazy just so they'll leave her alone. Hilda left behind Benjamin Hawkins' journal, which talks about all those hidden passages in town. She realizes that the culprit found the journal and is using it for evil. Instead of telling the police, Hilda set up this complicated scavenger hunt for Nancy. Maybe Hilda is a little crazy. You use the binoculars on the ship in the bottle at Whale World. This reveals 3 symbols. So you go to the hidden area and the sea caves through the lighthouse basement. And it's a minor puzzle. You need to select the 3 symbols. It's an okay puzzle. The trick is realizing that the trident appears twice. So you have a 50-50 chance of getting the right one on your first guess. Solving the puzzle reveals Benjamin's old machine. You use it to make the wall retract. So you have to go back to Katie's now and kayak to the sea caves. But before I talk about the endgame sequence, there's a scene that's kind of hard to unlock. In the cafe, there's a postcard with a picture of Atlantic herring. Nancy can notice, hey, that's the same fish that's on the beach at the lighthouse. Holt will say that's impossible. That's Atlantic herring. This is the Pacific Ocean. On Katie's boat is a cooler full of fish, which melts over the course of the game. It's filled with Atlantic herring. That's only half of the scene. You also need to examine Jenna's robbed closet multiple times and note that her stolen boat parts were from Save King. You talk to her about it. Then the next time you talk to Katie, there should be bags from Save King near her. I've only gotten this scene once, so I'm not exactly sure what the triggers are. I had no idea the scene was in the game until I got nasty comments about it on my Everything Wrong With video. Nancy confronts Katie. Katie says she didn't rob Jenna. Everyone here gets stuff from Save King. It must be the only store in town. Katie confesses she's been secretly feeding Atlantic herring to the whale, but she's not the culprit, so the herring storyline is just a red herring. Katie suspects someone else is feeding the whale, and she insists on sending you back home as soon as possible, which is not only rude, but super suspicious when it comes immediately after the detective caught you breaking the law. You kayak to the hidden part of the sea caves. In the far back is the Culprits Lair. When Nancy climbs out to look at it, she knocks an air tank into the water. The orca appears, and Nancy goes, "Wow!" in all caps with 3 exclamation marks, so you know it's impressive. The orca tosses the air tank at Nancy. She realizes the orca is trained. Funny how Nancy figures that out in under 5 seconds when a whale expert like Katie never picked up on it. You can play toss with the orca with an inflatable ball. It's cute! The Culprit's Lair has several containers from the ship that sank. You know, the one that Nancy found driftwood for. They're containers of fish for the orca and a harness that fits on the orca. That made me so mad the first time I saw it. Who captures wild animals and puts harnesses on them? That's like capturing a giraffe so you can use it to hide stolen computers and trees. Who even thinks of something like that? The game soon explains that the military uses trained orcas for deep-sea diving. I had no idea that was the case. And now I want to know how Andy got his hands on a military orca. I think stealing a whale from the military might actually be harder than recovering cargo off of a sunken ship. Also in this area are Katie's work gloves. This is a fake out to make it seem like Katie is the culprit. The end of the game explains the culprits needed gloves, so they stole Katie's. We're never told why they needed work gloves or why they searched Katie's place first. I would have looked for gloves at the hardware store or the camping supply place. When Nancy leaves the caves, Bess and George call, so the culprits will have time to kidnap Katie. Dang it, Bess and George, if you hadn't called, Katie would be safe! Nancy and her friends discuss the case. Nancy promises to confront Katie right away, but when she gets back, Katie's boat is gone. Dun dun dun. At this point, Nancy knows the culprits are doing a dive tonight. I don't like how Nancy magically knows this. I would have put a note or something in the sea cave so Nancy could read it and learn about the dive that way. Presumably, Nancy figures out the culprits are doing a dive tonight because they marked today's date on the calendar that they left on the lighthouse. That's a bit of a stretch. going from someone in a lighthouse circled today's date to the culprits are definitely making a dive tonight. Plus, Nancy saw the calendar a long time ago. Why didn't she figure out what it means until just now? Nancy has to ask Holt and Andy to take her out. With both conversations, one option says you want to capture Katie, and the other option says you want to catch the culprits. I thought that was a nice touch. Holt turns you down, but Andy is so curious he can't say no. He takes Nancy out towards the culprit's ship and promises to wait for her return. As many people have noted, this is a dumb move on Andy's part. He helps Nancy foil the culprit, even though he is the culprit. He should have kidnapped Nancy here the same way his conspirators kidnapped Katie. You could argue that he wanted to trick Nancy into thinking he's innocent, and he thought it was impossible for Nancy to sneak on board without being seen, but that's placing way too much faith in his underlings who have already failed him. And 5 minutes from now, Andy stops caring about keeping his identity a secret. Nancy kayaks to the ship, which is humongous, by the way. I know they only operate during night when it's foggy, but I can't believe no one ever noticed it before. Nancy climbs up the side of the ship, and there's a challenge to avoid the crew. Basically, you can hide in the spot on the left or the spot on the right. You pick the one that has the better cover. And this was a fine challenge. Along the way, Nancy overhears the culprits talking about their scheme, and she discovers that the cargo they're retrieving is animal furs. Now that I think about it, I'm surprised Nancy didn't open one of the containers when she was in the sea caves. That would have been enough evidence for the Coast Guard, right? Nancy makes her way inside the ship, where the whale is inside a tank. Past this is a storeroom where Katie is sitting at a desk. Surprise! Katie isn't the culprit! She explains that she saw the culprits harnessing the whale and they kidnapped her. Katie hears Andy coming and tells Nancy to hide, but sadly Nancy's not smart enough to replace Katie's gag, so when Andy comes, he sees the gag was removed and instantly knows Nancy is somewhere nearby. Oh no! Escape music plays and Andy yells, "Somebody stop her!" when Nancy steps forward. Nancy has to make a break for it because she's caught if she stays in place. There are two game over sequences here, and both of them, Andy says, "Say goodnight, Nancy." Then he moves in to kill her. If you're in the area with Katie, Andy comes much closer to Nancy, but his arms are down. If you're in the area with the whale, he holds his hands up like he's gonna strangle you, but he keeps his distance. The culprit in the last game was a strangler. Also like the last game, the exit door closes at a distance, and you have to find a way to hit the culprit on the head. I don't care that the two culprit captures are similar. I thought they were both interesting. As Andy approaches, Nancy claims she told the others. He recognizes it as a bluff, and he thinks for a bit about the best way to explain Nancy's death. It was creepy for the culprit to slowly approach you and say increasingly threatening things. It definitely adds to the danger and tenseness of the situation. You can grab an air tank here. If you use it on Andy, he blocks it like some kind of master fighter. Wow. You throw the air tank in the water. Andy laughs. What did you do that for? Just like in the game over sequence, Andy says, "Say goodnight, Nancy," and moves in to strangle you. It's kind of sneaky to have the good and bad endings be so similar. I'm sure some players were tricked into thinking, "Oh no, I got the bad ending again," but it's the good ending. The whale throws the air tank at Andy's head. He spins around and says "nuts" before falling over. That's when Holt Scotto shows up with the Coast Guard. In the ending, Nancy re-explains the culprit's plot, in case you weren't paying attention earlier. Andy's in jail now, and Jenna's making clam chowder. That is all the resolution we get for Jenna. The fact that nothing changed in Jenna's life makes me realize she did pretty much nothing the entire game. Katie is voting for Holt. Aww. Holt doesn't get mentioned in the ending. Aww. The orca is becoming wild again, and Nancy sees Caddy in the harbor when she leaves. The end. The game reuses most of the sassy detective awards from the last game. The pictures and the names are exactly the same, except for Game Master. That award's description mentioned arcade games, so they switched it to playing the Whale World games. There are some new awards for using the GPS a lot, using the kayak a lot, making lots of good sandwiches, and making lots of bad sandwiches. That's it for Danger on Deception Island. It's a very good game, although there are a few things that hold me back from loving it. The pipes puzzle, the clamming puzzle, and all the backtracking you do for Hilda's scavenger hunt. Those are my main problems with the game, and I will take a half point off for each of them. I give Nancy Drew number 9, Danger on Deception Island, an 8.5 out of 10. I was originally going to give it an 8 out of 10, but that would make it the same as Ghost Dogs of Moon Lake, and I like this game much better than Ghost Dogs of Moon Lake. Although it's a lower score than Message in a Haunted Mansion, so I guess I like Haunted Mansion more. I thought I liked this game more, huh? Maybe my scoring system is totally inconsistent.